Hello and welcome to the vlog. With much regret, I departed the glorious lovely moorings here spot. I needed to crack on as I had much more travelling to do before settling down for the winter, and the boat needed to be blacked and I wanted to visit some friends and so on. The Macclesfield remained lovely, with interesting private moorings as well as plenty of great spots for passing boats to stop, with beautiful open countryside views. I'm quite sure this chap had a very valid reason for using the digger to chop down trees and build a bonfire, but I bet he was having fun as well. Who wouldn't have fun with a digger and a big bonfire? The plan for this journey was to go up, round and past Congleton and stop just short of the Bosley lock flight, the only flight of locks on the entire length of this canal. As you shall see, this plan did not come to fruition as expected. And, call me bonkers if you like, but a stripy field had to be admired too. This is quite the collection of fiberglass canal cruisers moored on a farmer's field. I'd like a rural mooring like this, but it would still need to have facilities. Oh look, there's even one going spare. There are a remarkable number of golf courses alongside the canals. Should I be wearing a protective hat in case of flying balls along here maybe? I'm sure it would hurt if one whacked me in the head. Google is no help in explaining why this is called Billy Tight's footbridge. Who was Billy? Why does he have a footbridge? No one knows. One thing you do know is that it marks the edge of Congleton, where people like to keep giraffes in their gardens, of course. This might seem like just another bridge, but let's look closer. The path going up and over from the left-hand side comes back down still on this side of the bridge and then curls underneath it. This was so a horse, pulling a barge by rope, didn't need to be disconnected from that rope when crossing from one side of the canal to the other. They call these snake bridges here, not turnover bridges, as I've heard them called elsewhere. And so through Congleton, where the geese like to line up and keep watch. Below the aqueduct, a little reminder of the life you've left behind, cars and noise and tarmac. I do like canal-side houses, but I'm not sure I'd want one below the water level just in case of leaks. And the Macclesfield is known for leaking. One of the bridges ahead is the railway line, the station right next to the canal. You're still in Congleton here, but you wouldn't know it from the otherworldly look of things. As you go round the edge of town, you reach the Biddulph Aqueduct, which has amazing views, including this railway viaduct to the west. It's a popular mooring spot, and I'd considered stopping here, but there was no space, so I had to press on anyway. Imagine that view out of your window in the morning. As this oncoming boater came past, he shouted at me, did I know the Bosley lock flight was closed because of an emergency leak repair at the top? Well, no, I did not, but it was good info, so I stopped just a little further on, in walking distance of a shop, which I'd need, as the flight was to shut for 7 days. With the lock flight freshly reopened and the weather fair, I took the opportunity to tackle it. The first of the 12 locks was just a couple of miles from where I'd moored, so there was an hour's gentle cruising to get there first. According to the historic Narrowboat Club, Skylark here carried chemicals from Manchester to Coventry and Wolverhampton in the early 1900s. Having been through several private owners since 1956, it's now used to carry coal. Just after this boat, a somewhat odd sight. When someone said to brand the cow, that's not usually what they mean. Remember what I said about there being loads of mooring on the Macclesfield? It really made a change after the Calden. I could easily have stopped every mile or so here with metal armco to tie up to and views of the hills to look out at. That one is Bosley Cloud, on the border between Cheshire and Staffordshire. It's 343 metres high. Just around the corner you spot this telecoms mast, and it means you're practically at the bottom of the locks. Down below runs the River Dane, a tributary of the Weaver. There's Bosley Bottom Lock. 12 to do in all, this would be a good workout. No one else around and no boats coming down, so nothing for it but for me to set the lock. I was rather taken by these huge stones used for the lock walls. There are several of these information boards along this flight, which is rather nice. It tells you all about the local area and the canal history. But there's something odd here. At the bottom of the lock you've got the usual 2 gates. And at the top, hang on, also 2 gates, not just one. But this is a narrow lock, not a wide lock. 2 top gates is not normal. There's no plank to walk over the gates from one side to the other, and you'd be unwise to balance on the gates themselves. Not a problem when the boat has risen, as you can use the bow to walk over. But when the boat's at the bottom and you want to raise that other paddle, you have to walk all the way round to the other end where there's a bridge. Oh, that's exhausting. And it can only easily be put there because the boat can go under it. A bridge at the top end would have to be raised up, so they don't build one. And the same when you've left the lock and need to come back to shut the gates. You have to walk round. Oh, this is going to take a lot more walking than usual. Or I might just only open the paddle on this side. I confess I'm exaggerating a bit, because when leaving the lock you only need get the end of the boat just clear of the gates, and you can then leave it sitting there while you hop off and close them like this, using the boat as a bridge. Do you remember how a wasp distracted me on the Calden Canal? Well, when I got back to the boat to steer it into Lock 2, an entire swarm were hovering over where I stand to steer. There was no way to move them. I had to just stand in the middle of the swarm, so excuse me when this happened. And that wasn't the worst of it. I don't like wasps, but as the boat moved they did clear off. You should never normally leave your boat unattended in a lock in case it catches on something. But to speed things up, when it was almost full, I decided to go on to the next and set that lock while the boat rose its final few inches. I might not have done this, except that each lock was full and needed emptying, which takes time. And as it emptied, I could still clearly see the boat in the lock below and could run back if needed. Also, rather than tie to the lock landing each time, I took to opening the next lock gates and going straight in, then running back to close the previous set. It saved all that tedious tying up and untying. Because of all that, good progress was made.
I'm a little out of breath, but 4 locks done in an hour, that's about right. So I just need to do all that twice over again.
And from this point onwards, things got substantially quicker and easier, as boats coming the other way meant empty locks, and better still, they'd leave the bottom gates open for me, and I'd leave the top gates open for them. In corporate speak, this is a win-win. Another lovely boat coming down at Lock 7. And again at Lock 8.
Another 4 locks done, and that's a great illustration of how much difference it makes when the locks are set in your favour and there are boats coming down, so that you can leave the gates open behind you and they leave the gates open for you to go into, because those 4 locks only took 35 minutes, so the time has been almost halved.
According to the info board, that building was once a smithy, where ironworks for the locks and horseshoes were made. This building was a pub for the lock workers, though it's now a farmhouse. For the final 4 locks, there were fewer boats still coming down, but every one makes a helpful difference. And after 2 hours and 7 minutes, I headed towards Bosley top lock, the last one. Such a welcome sight, the top gates opening out and the entire rest of the Macclesfield lying ahead with no further locks to be tackled.
12 locks done in about 2¼ hours, not too bad. Also emptied the toilet tanks at the facilities block at the top lock, and I'm now sitting on the water point refilling that. Then I shall go and find a mooring and have, you guessed it, a cheese sandwich and a nice cup of tea.
I'd hoped to tie up straight away, but it turns out these moorings are all permit holders only, which you buy from the Canal and River Trust on long-term contracts. Notice the unusual gravestone-like mile markers found along this canal. They were buried in World War II so as to stop enemy paratroopers using them to find their way. Someone has put a lot of effort into this towpath mooring. Finally, where the permit space is run out, you can stop. So I did.